Good evening, everyone. We have some good news. Baruch Hashem, the classes from here on are going to be broadcast on TorahAnytime.com. Some of the classes already were uploaded, I see, and the Mitzvah Hashem from here on, the classes will be uploaded. So it's a big yeshikoyach also to TorahAnytime.com for carrying these shiurim. So today we are beginning. We finished Perek Zayin of Hayichud Vehaemunah. We will be beginning Emir Hashem Perek Ches today, hopefully. But we have now finished an important part of Hayichud Vehaemunah, and from Perek Ches and on, the last 5 parakim of Hayichud Vehaemunah discusses a different, although related, concept. And very short, the first 5 parakim of Hayichud Vehaemunah talked about how this world is not a stira to Achdus Hashem. How although that there's a world and there's creations, but nothing in it constitutes a contradiction to the idea of Hashem Echad, Eined Milvadeh. And then, from Perek Ches and on, we are moving away from the worlds, and we will be talking about Hashem Himself, and talking about Achdus Hashem within Hashem. How is it possible that Hashem, who's seemingly multifaceted at the same time, but Hashem Echad, Hashem is completely one? So the first 7 parakim are about the worlds vis-a-vis Hashem, and from Perek Ches on, we're going to be talking about Hashem Himself, on the fact that Hashem has Chachma and Chesed and Ratzain and all the midas, all of them don't make the Eibishter an entity which is what we call a murkav, a composite entity. That's from Perek Ches on. So quickly to review what we learned from Perek Aleph through Perek Zayin. So Perek Aleph of Hayichud Vehaemunah, the Alter Rebbe, he laid out the foundation. The foundation being the idea, the concept of perpetual creation, how the world at every single moment is being recreated from nothingness. That was Perek Aleph. Perek Beis, the Alter Rebbe gave his philosophical rayas to this. In other words, in Perek Aleph, the Alter Rebbe, he quoted it simply in the name of the Mekubalim. And that's a fact that we can accept as a fact. But in Perek Beis, the Alter Rebbe says, he explains this is a big mistake of those people who deny or who reject the idea of Hashgacha Pratis or the idea of the miracles of the Torah, is because they fail to understand the fundamental difference between creating Yesh Miyesh and creating Yesh Miyayin. So when we create Yesh Miyesh Taka, it's possible for a creator to create an item. And obviously when we use the word creator, we're using it loosely because it's not really creating. It's more someone who's forming an object. And once the object is formed, it no longer requires the attention of the one who made that keli. As opposed to Bri Yesh Miyayin, the Alter Rebbe gives the mashal of Kriyas Yamsuf that needed a constant wind in order to keep the water standing. The same thing is, the idea of perpetual creation has a logical basis. We see that the way the Eibishter behaves, and when something is Heipach HaTeva, so it requires a constant force keeping it going. So between Perek Aleph and Beis, we've firmly established the idea of Hisavus Tamidis, of constant creation. In Perek Gimel, the Alter Rebbe says, okay, so now that we know that Hashem is constantly creating everything, so now we understand Eined Milvadeh, because now we understand that nothing exists. If you're going from the perception that the Eibishter created something and now it exists, so then Taka Eined Milvadeh or Ein Oid is difficult to understand. What do you mean there's nothing else? There's the Eibishter created other things. Ein Acharami, the Eibishter is more powerful than them, and if the Eibishter wants, maybe he can manipulate them, he can destroy them, but ultimately there is something else. But once we understand the concept explained in Perek Aleph and Beis of his Havos Tamidis, so now we understand Taka, there's nothing else. Nothing exists other than the Eibishter. The fact that we look and we see other things, that's only because the Eibishter is constantly existing them, but not that they in and of themselves exist. Which raises the question, if nothing really exists, why do we Taka feel like we exist? Why do we look around and it looks like there's a whole world out there which is separate from Hashem? So on Perek Daled, the Alter Rebbe introduces the idea of Hakel, Hagadol, and Hagibur. So the Gedula of the Eibishter, the Chesed of the Eibishter is the fact that He's able to create an infinite amount of creations. That expresses Hashem's chesed. The Gvura of Hashem is Hashem's ability to conceal Himself. That even though that He is everything, and Take Einid Mulvade, at the same time, the Eibishter has the ability of being able Kishem B'Shum Magen Havaya Elikim, the Shem Elikim, which is the Magen, it covers the sun, it covers the Shem, the Teva covers up Hashem, and just like we have no concept how it is that the Eibishter is able to create an infinite amount of creations, the idea of Bri Yesh Mi'ayin is totally beyond us. We can't even begin to envision what it means to create something from nothing. The same thing is just that we don't understand Hashem's midah of Gedulam, we also can't comprehend Hashem's midah of Gevura. And how is it that at the same time that everything is Hashem, at the same time Hashem is absolutely hidden and we can't see Hashem anyway? So that was Perek Dalet. Perek Hey, as you might recall, was somewhat of a parenthetical Perek, addressing some loose ends. And then in Perek Vav, the Alter Rebbe says, okay, now we understand that the Eibishter is everything. Einid Milvade. And however, there is another koyach called Shem Elikim, which covers up on Shem Havayu, which covers up on the MS. So one might think that Shem Elikim is an independent operator. And Kaviyachol, Mitzad Shem Elikim, the worlds are epis and mitzias. And there the Alter Rebbe introduces us the idea of Havayu Hu Elikim, the idea that that Elikim is also part of Hashem's Midas HaChesed, really. And its purpose is that the world should be created as the way Hashem wants. So therefore, even because Havayu Elikim, it's one thing, so therefore, even the Hastara, that also is the Eibishter Himself. So we can't even say that Mitzad the Hastara, there's something else, because the Hastara is also the Eibishter Himself. That was Perek Vav. And Perek Zayin, the Alter Rebbe continued and applied this idea to the idea of Ani Havaya Shanisi. That's why the Eibishter never changed, because everything is a lukus. And the bottom line that Alter Rebbe gets to is the idea of Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai, which in simple terms that means that there is no entity, there is no anything which isn't the Eibishter. Everything is Eibishter. Alama, so what is Tzimtzum? Tzimtzum is only the Gabi, the Gilui, the Gabi that we don't perceive it, but not Mitzad the Emes. And with this we've concluded the sugya of worlds vis-a-vis the Eibishter, and how, despite the fact that there are worlds, Einid Mulvade. And before we continue, we should take a moment to discuss the practical implications of these deeply philosophical and theological ideas that we've been discussing over the past few months. The Yisoid that we're learning over in Shaar Vehaemunah is that everything that exists, and we've had this many times, is oisius, is datzara mamaris. What is the idea of oisius? What is the idea of words? So words is something which is interesting. On the one hand, the idea of words, the concept of a word is to reveal. The purpose of words is that we have in our minds, we have understandings, we have perceptions, and in our heart we have feelings. And how do we reveal that which is going on inside of us to others? We use words. So words reveal. But imagine if you were to open up a book and it was written in ancient Greek, which I'll just take a wild guess and I'll assume that no one here in this room understands ancient Greek. It is possible that there's a lot of wisdom and ideas contained in these words. But are these words revealing or are they concealing?
Concealing. If you don't know the language.
They conceal. For me, they're concealing, because I don't understand the language. Or another example would be, imagine that you have a book that was written in code. It's an English take, but it was written in code. And you can't crack the code. So, do these words contain an incredible amount of ideas, energy, ruchnius? Absolutely. But at this moment,
doesn't have the ability to transmit it.
So at this point, the words actually are serving as a hastara. The words are serving as a a concealment. Imagine even more. Imagine that the book in ancient Greek was in code. Was in code. In other words, not only was it in ancient Greek, but it was also in code. How in the mashal, if you remember, there's the Asar Mamaris, and then there's the Tzirufim and Tmuris and Gematriyos. In other words, imagine taking something which already is hidden and then further hiding it by putting it into code. Everything is Eibishter. When we say that everything is letters, everything in this word is oisius. Everything in this world and all the worlds is only Asar Mamaris. That's all it is. Is the koyach hapoyel b'hanifal, is the koyach of Hashem, which is in the Asar Mamaris. But the question is, when we look at these letters, do we see the words, and do the words shine for what they are, revealing what they are, or do they conceal? And obviously there are different madrigas in this. So sometimes you read something and you understand it. Sometimes you read something. I know that sometimes I'll look at for my work purposes, I'll have to look at some sort of academic journal written by some sort of some lawyer or some professor, some big doctor, and you read it and you say, yeah, okay, I understood 10%, 20%, 30%. Okay, that's another madriga. And sometimes you look at something, and again, it's in another language, so you don't understand anything. And then sometimes you look at something, it's in another language, but at least you recognize the letters, because the same alphabet, as you recognize them. And then I know, Hashem, this Pesach I'm going to be in Ukraine. I've been there before, and you look at the words over there. So I look at a word, I'm like, okay, I recognize half of the letters in that word, because the Russian or the Ukrainian alphabet, they contain some letters that I recognize, some not. And imagine if I went to Taiwan. Then I wouldn't even recognize any of the letters. So there are different madrigas and how much the letters are master. And when we talk about the different worlds that exist, really what that means is, as in some worlds, so the Oisius are megala a little. In some, it's megala a little more, they understand a little more. And then when we come down into our world, it's all Taiwanese, everything. If that's a language, Taiwanese. But Akapanim, the Hell and Vehester is absolute, but at the same time, even though the Hell and Vehester is absolute, at the same time, we look around knowing that every single thing, and every single, not only a physical thing, but every single moment in time, and every single event, and every single phenomenon, and every single thing, all it is the Asar Mamaris, which means it is the Koyach of Hashem, even though the letters, the words are concealing it, and we can't understand for what it is. The idea of Klipa is when the letters are mastered to the point that we can't see it at all. Can't see Elkus at all. And this changes the ability to be able to integrate these ideas and make them our reality, which is ultimately the point of it all. The famous vart of the Baal Shem Tov brought on by the Tildos Yaakov Yosef, V'hanoichi hastir astir. That Hashem says that he will hide himself, but he uses a double lashon of Hester. What's the double lashon? Sometimes something is hidden, and you know that something is hidden. So let's say your keys are missing, they're hidden, but you know they're hidden, so you're looking for it. And sometimes something is so hidden to the point
You don't see it.
you have no clue that it's hidden. You don't even know there's something that's hidden, and that's the ultimate galus. And Vehaemunah is about taking away that Hester, recognizing that there's something hidden, and then working to pull away at the curtain and being able to look at the world and saying, you're a lie, you're a sheker, and what you're telling me is one big lie, is one big sheker, and the emes is that emes Hashem li'olam, that everything is a likus. And that obviously changes our whole perception of hashgacha pratis. You know that before we learn Tanya, some people, we have you might want to say, immature understanding of hashgacha pratis. You imagine the Eibishter up there somewhere and pulling strings like a puppeteer. And by the way, that itself is good. It's better than imagining Rahman al-Islam and Eibishter who is not involved in this world. We'll talk about that in a moment. But even in the Frumvelt, I'm talking about the people who are Ma'aminim, they imagine there's a world, and the Eibishter is watching and paying attention, and wherever necessary, he's pulling the strings and making sure that everything runs as he intends it to. But once we learn what we're learning over here, we have a totally different understanding of Hashgacha Pratis. Hashgacha Pratis is not the Eibishter looking down at a world which is outside of him and manipulating. But when you realize that everything that happens is Hashem, not Hashem controlling something outside of him, but al derech what we said, that everything by the Eibishter is himself. Nothing has an existence other than the Chayis Aliki. So Hashgacha Pratis is a whole new understanding. It's not that there's a phenomenon being controlled by Hashem, but the phenomenon is Hashem. This also gives us a little more of an understanding and the idea of being able to be mekabel yisurim ba'ahava. And I know that this is easy to say and harder to actually implement and to take to heart when a person is going through a difficult time. But this is the emes. The emes is that once again, people look at gam zula toiva. Okay, things happen. But ultimately the Eibishter is keeping an eye to make sure and it's something that all works out well in the end, and ultimately it must be for the good because the Eibishter controls everything. How different is that than the understanding which we're getting over here in Hayichud Vehaemunah? That if there's suffering, but maybe in a different words, but it is Hashem. How is it possible that the suffering is from Hashem? And it is Hashem. This very event that happens is from Hashem. Okay, so we have to explain, as we learned earlier in Tanya, Perek Chavav, the idea of Alma Diskasya, that the Eibishter is hanhagi with us sometimes is in a way which is beyond our understanding. But if we're to understand that everything is Hashem, can it even enter our imagination that something is bad? Is that possible?
So bad is good then.
Forget about bad or good, it's Hashem. It's Hashem. Again, it's changing the whole perception. It's not about is it bad, is it good, it's Hashem. Now the Rebbe talks about this later on in Nigeres HaKodesh. I think we've read this once. If you want, you can follow along on page Kuf Tezayin, opposite of page 230.
What's that? Where?
Ubir Inyan. The Rebbe says this is a famous letter. It's called Laskil Chabina. B'yat Hashem, one day we'll get here. We'll be learning this letter also. And it talks about the idea, as we'll see, of Ein Ra Yered Milmayla. The Ein Ra, there is no such thing as something which is that's bad, that comes from heaven. There's a story that's associated with this. The Rebbe's birthday is on Yud Aleph Nisan, which means that the Rebbe's bris was on Chol HaMoed Pesach. The Rebbe was born in a city called Nikolaev in Ukraine, and his grandfather, his maternal grandfather, was the Rav there. His name was Rabbi Shlomo Yanovsky. The Rebbe was born in 1902. And then a few years later, when the Rebbe was around 7 years old, the Rebbe's family moved to another city called Yekaterinoslav, today known as Dnipro. It was known as Dnipropetrovsk. Now they call it Dnipro. They changed the name again, but Al Kapanim, where the Rebbe's father became the Rav of Dnipropetrovsk. But the Rebbe's, originally he was born in Nikolaev, where his grandfather was the Rav over there. So the bris was held in the house of the Rebbe Shlomo Yanovsky, the Rebbe's grandfather. And the Chassidim in the town were invited to come. And one of the Chassidim who came, his name was Rabbi Asher Grossman, and he didn't eat anything by the bris. It was Pesach.
Oh,
it's Pesach. But still, to go to the house of the Rav and not to eat in the house of the Rav of the city is an offense. What do you mean? You don't want to eat somewhere Zainzak, but to go to the house of the Rav, if you can't trust the Rav. So the Rav noticed that he wasn't eating, and he said that the truth is I should be upset at you. But I can't be upset at you because you saved my life. What happened? And he said the story. The Rav Meir Shleim said that it was a few years ago that he got tuberculosis. And it was a disease. If I remember correctly, it was tuberculosis. And he was put into quarantine, and there was a house outside of the city where they put tuberculosis is contagious, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so they put him in a house outside the city, and it was a house where people didn't come back from, because you're put together with you. Even if you're recovering, you're gonna.
You always keep getting it back. Relapse.
Other 6 people.
It was very low, and not only that, no one was able to visit him because no one was allowed into the house because they needed to stop the spread. So the Meir Shlomo says that every single day, my chaver, Rabbi Grossman, he came to the house.
Didn't care.
And he stood outside the window, and with a Tanya, he read the letter Lahaskil Chabina. He read it out loud under the window, where it talks about Ein Ra Yerim Al Maila, and he went home, and he did this every day to try to lift their spirits. And he said, I recovered because of that. So since you saved my life, I can't be upset at you for not eating in my house. But in this letter, the Alter Rebbe writes, a true amunah in the one who created everything. Dahainu, meaning what? Shabriya yesh mi'ayin, that Bria is yesh mi'ayin, hanikra reishis chachma. The yesh is created from ayin. What is the ayin that creates the worlds? It's Hashem's chachma. V'hi chachma say she'einu museges l'shum nivra. Hashem's chachma, which is not grasped or comprehended by any creation. Habriya hazoisi b'chol eis v'rega. The creation is every single moment. Shemishavim kol habruim yesh mi'ayin b'chachmasa yizbarach. All creations are created yesh mi'ayin from Hashem's chachma. Hamachayes HaKoil gives life to everything. When a person contemplates with depth, and envisions in his mind, the fact that he's been created from nothing at every moment. How is it possible for him to consider that something's bad for him? Or he has some sort of yisurim from Bani Chai Mezoina, or Yishari Yisurim Ba'olam. Harei Ha'ayin Shechachmasi Yisbarach U'makar Ha'chaim V'atoy V'oinig. The Eibishter's Chachma is the source of life and good and pleasure. V'u'eiden. Not time it continues, but the point being, what is this world? This world is the Eibishter's energy, the Eibishter's Chachma. It's all good, it's all Hashem. It's not even it's all good, it's all Hashem. So it really changes our perception of the way we view Yisurim when we look and realize that the world, Eino Ed Malvada, and everything, again, is not only controlled by Hashem, which ultimately that is what Simsum Kipshutei means. Simsum Kipshutei means is a world which is controlled by Hashem, as opposed to Simsum Shalei Kipshutei means that everything in and of itself is the Eibishter Mamish. And this connects somewhat, interestingly, this whole idea of Achdus Hashem to this week's Parsha. There's an interesting medrash in this week's Parsha, Medrash Rabbah, on the Makav Tzvardeya. It says, Rav Acha bar Reb Chanina Amar. Rav Acha bar Reb Chanina said, Afilu dvarim shateroyo eison ki'ilu heim yutarim ba'olam. You look at certain things, they look like they're extra in this world. Kigoyin, for example, nechashim v'akravim, snakes and scorpions. Hein hayu b'chal briyas shalaylam. They too are part of Hashem's creation. Amar lahana kadosh baruch hu l'neviim. The Eibishter tells the Neviim, Ma'atam svurim. What do you guys think? Im ein atam hoilchim b'shlichusi. If you guys don't want to do my shlichus, v'chi ein li shliach. You think that I will be left without any shliach? There's the advantage of the earth is in everything. I can do my shlichus through a snake, through a scorpion. Even I could do it with a frog. Proof being, if not for the tzira, which was a bee, how would the Eibishter punish the Amorium? The Amorium, we know that says, the pasuk says the Eibishter said that tzira, that a bee, a kind of bee that damaged the Amorium, the Knanim. But the point is, and if not for the frog, how would the Eibishter punish the Mitzrim? And that's why the pasuk says, that I'm going to punish you. Nice medrash, right? I think we've done this many times. And we've pointed out that the Rebbe takes nice medrashim and the Rebbe pokes a lot of holes in them. Because when we look at a medrash, we don't take it too seriously. We're like, oh, that sounds good. That's inspiring. What does it mean? That without the frog, how would the Abish to be able to punish the Mitzrim? First of all, there were 9 other makkahs.
Yeah.
There were 9 other makkahs. And Sfardeya wasn't the first makkah, which by the way would seem was perhaps the most significant makkah because it destroyed their Avodah Zarah. It wasn't the last makkah, it wasn't the final straw that broke the camel's back. It was one of the, so what do you mean, Iluli as Sfardeya, without Sfardeya, how would the Eibishter punish the Mitzvah? And moreover, B'chlal, that whole statement is a funny statement. Without the Sfardeya, how could the Eibishter punish the Mitzvah? And if not these 10 makkahs, there could have been another 30 makkahs. Like this whole statement is a funny statement. What does it mean, Iluli as Sfardeya? Without the Sfardeya, how would the Eibishter punish the Mitzvah? So what a moment ago sounded like a very nice, cute medrash suddenly is very difficult. What is he trying to say? So the Rebbe explains that Mitzrayim represented a certain klipa. And that klipa had to be broken. And in order to break the klipa of Mitzrayim, we needed specifically the Sfardeya. Why is that? So the Rebbe says that when it comes to klipa, the klipa of the goyim, there are 3 different types of klipa. The lowest, let's talk about the highest level of klipa, was represented by Bilam. The highest meaning the most benign, the least harmful klipa. Even though Bilam was a very bad person, but ultimately Bilam, on quite a few occasions, he said, Lo yuchal laver espi Hashem, which is very different, by the way, than Pari. Pari had no problem going and fighting Hashem and disobeying what Hashem said, as opposed to Bilam, who on many occasions said, I can't do other than what the Eibush there. And he, although he tried to circumvent, but at the end of the day, he had this recognition, Lo yuchal laver. And why is that? As the Gemara says, that the Goyim, they consider Hashem Elokoh de Elokaya, meaning that Bilam recognized the supremacy of Hashem, while at the same time, even though he recognized the supremacy of Hashem, he also was a Baal Gaiva, as we had in Pirkei Avos. We have in Pirkei Avos. It's the Lashon he uses over there, Nefesh Rechava. Because Hashem is great, and Hashem created me, and Hashem has control over me at every moment. But I am also a Mitzias. Alakada alakaya. Hashem is important, but there are also other important things that Hashem creates. It's a klipa. That's not Achdus Hashem. Achdus Hashem means Einod Milvade. There's nothing other than Hashem. And everything is completely bottled to Hashem. Bilam was not completely bottled to Hashem. In other words, in behavior he was bottled, but ultimately he was also a Baal Gaima. And then you had Pari, who Pari Befedish rejected the idea that Hashem created him, as the pasuk says, I believe it's in Haftarah of this week, where Pari says, Li Ye'or va'ani asisini, which means Pari says, the Nile, the river belongs to me, the Nilus belongs to me, and I created myself, which is a denial of Hashem as his creator and the one who controls his destiny, which is why he was able to fight Hashem. But that doesn't mean that he denied Hashem's existence. Doesn't mean he denied Hashem's existence, but he felt himself to be an independent actor. There's Hashem. Maybe even Hashem is more powerful than me, but ultimately I have my own source. I am who I am. I created myself, and I will do what I want to do, which is a bigger klipa than Bilam. And then you have a klipa represented by Sanchariv, as the pasuk describes. Sanchariv was mamish mecharev umegadef and denied the existence of Hashem. So these are 3 levels, yes, of rejection of Hashem and Achdus Hashem. One is I accept that Hashem is my creator, my master, but I am also a Mitzias, that's Bilam. Another one is I accept that there is a Hashem, but he didn't create me, which is Pare. And then there is Sanchariv, who completely rejected Hashem's existence. Now, it would seem that Sanchariv, of all these klippas, is the worst. And Definitely in a certain aspect, in a certain way, Sanchariv is the worst. But on the other hand, the Rebbe points out that if you want to say Bilam, he was relatively positive. He listened to Hashem. So he was doing what Hashem wanted. And then you have Sanchariv was actively fighting Hashem. And then in the middle you have Parai, who is, so to say, apathetic about Hashem. Which in a way, as we know, apathy is worse than opposition. When you're opposing something, so in a way you're expressing that thing that you're opposing. It exists. What? It exists, it's there, you're thinking about it, you're talking about it, you're fighting it. Whereas Parai, he wasn't fighting the concept of it, he wasn't denying Hashem, he wasn't rejecting Hashem, he's just saying Hashem is there and I'm here, and Hashem is irrelevant to me. Which is very different than actively fighting Hashem, as Sanchariv did, or fighting the concept of Hashem. So Parai was parv, nishtahin, nishtaher, apathetic. And in creation also we have three different types of creations. You have those creations that are positive and beneficial for the world. Then you have those creations that are harmful to this world, such as snakes, scorpions. And then you have creations that seem they're not beneficial, they're not harmful, they're part of the nishtahin, nishtahar. For example, the frog. What is that? Is a frog good for you? Is good for us? What does it do for us? Okay, I'm sure there's some sort of kavanah, but on the other hand, a frog also isn't harmful. And because Parai represented that klipa, which was that middle klipa, the way that the Eibishter, when he punishes and he wants to break a klipa, he uses a tool which is midah keneged midah. So therefore, iluli at Tzfardeya, if not for the Tzfardeya, how would Hashem have punished the Mitzrim on their terms? And told Parai, you should know that even what you represent, the klipa that you represent, which is represented by the Tzfardeya, that also serves me. You want to see? Tomorrow the Tzfardim are going to be, and they're going to overtake your land. Even your klipa also was created just to serve me. So here we have the whole gamut of these three klippas represent the gamut of the rejection of Achdus Hashem. And in Shaar Vehaemunah, not only obviously are we moving away from Sanchariv, not only are we obviously moving away from Parai, both of them which were obviously are obviously anathema to any Yid, but even Bilam, who said Le'uchal Laver is Pi Hashem, but at the same time considered himself in the world to be Epis Vasa Metzias, we're moving away from that also to the recognition and the understanding of Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the idea of Eled Milvadei, and everything is Elokus Mamish. And with that we finish the first 7 parakim as mentioned of Shaar Yichud Vehaemunah. And now we're ready to start Perek Ches. And Perek Ches is going to address the issue that, as we mentioned, the Rambam, he talks about this, that when we're talking about unity, Achdus, you'll find many times in Chassidus the term Achdus Pshuta, because there is unity and then there's simple unity. Simple unity as opposed to a Achdus Merkeves, which means a unity which is a composite. So for example, in this physical world, everything that we have is a composite. There is no such thing as absolute unity. Every physical thing. Very simple. By way of example, this table, is it one? So besides for the fact that it's made up of a top and legs and metal and plastic, and besides for the fact that the plastic itself is probably made up of different components and different elements, but there's something else very simple. I can cut this table in half, in which case you have one half over here, one half over here. So the table, even when it's whole, is the combination of 2 halves. Every physical thing theoretically can be cut. Even an atom can be cut, as we know. Yeah. That's what nuclear energy is all about. So therefore, anything physical is murkav of different parts. That's number one. But even beruchnius, when we talk about things spiritually, we're not talking about things in general are composites. They're not an achdus. So a human being. So how many people are here in this room? So you could say there's as many people as are in the room, and each one of us is one. But are we one? So physically speaking, each one of us has hands and feet and a nose. So we are a combination of different physical attributes and physical features and limbs. But also spiritually speaking, If we were Achdus, we'd be very simple. Our wives would have a very easy time with us. The problem is that we're so complex, and maybe they're more complex than we are. But the human being is made up of so many emotions and feelings, and there's the conscious and there's the subconscious. When we talk about the Eibishter, about being one, Achdus Pshuta means not a one being which is made up of many different midos and attributes and koiches, but absolute Achdus. That's what Hashem is. Hashem Echad. So this is the transition we're making. The previous 7 prakim, we're talking about how the Eibishter, the unity of Hashem, is not impacted or disturbed by the fact that creation happened. You would think that once Hashem created the worlds, so now suddenly there's something else. So the first 7 prakim discussed how Hashem's unity is not impacted by creation. Now we're going to move on. In Perek Ches, we're going to talk about how is it possible to say that Hashem is one when we look in the Torah and we find that Hashem has all these different attributes and all these different midos and all these different qualities. So how do we have a one Hashem if Hashem has all these qualities? Each one of these qualities is a different element of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Now, in the previous Perek, we spoke of what the Rambam says about Hashem, that Hu Amada and Hu Yidei and Hu Yidua. That even though that Hashem has knowledge, and Hashem, but nevertheless, by the Eibishter is absolutely one with his Chachma. And by the way, the Rambam is very specific about Chachma. For reasons we're not going to get into this Shaar, the Rambam in general, he characterizes Hashem himself as Chachma. And Hashem says, but he is one with his Chachma. Hashem is Chachma, but he is one with that Chachma which he is. Hu Amada, Hu Yedei, Hu Yedua. The Alter Rebbe is going to extend this, as we're going to see right now. We'll start Perek Ches inside. Perek Ches, Vehaemunah. Ma shekasov HaRambam Zal. That which the Rambam said, which we learned in the last Perek, Shakadosh Baruch Hu Muhusay V'Atzmusay V'Daitei HaKol Echad, that Hashem's essence and his knowledge is all one. Mamish. Achdus Pshuta V'Lei Murkevas Klal. An absolute unity, simple unity. As mentioned before, the word simple, when we talk about simple, in Chassidus and Kabbalah, it's different than when we talk about when we use the word simple. Pashut. When we talk about a Pashta Yid, usually it's somewhat of a derogatory term. Or simple to understand. But whenever you say the words, what does simple really mean? What is the antonym of simple? What is the opposite of simple? Complex. What is the definition of complex?
Multi-entities.
Right, multifaceted. Right. So when you have a piece of food and you say it's complex, that this has a complex taste, that means that there is a variety of seasonings in it and different flavors in it. Or when you look at a piece of art and you say it's complex, if someone took a canvas and colored it orange, you wouldn't say it's complex. It's simple. So when we talk about Achdus Pshuta by Hashem, we're talking about the simplicity of Hashem. We're talking about the fact that Hashem is not multifaceted, but everything is absolutely pashut. Achdus Pshuta, Achdus which is simple. V'lei Murkevas Klal, not a Achdus which is Murkev, which is grafted. It's not the Eibishter, it's not a hybrid of different features. So the Rambam says this with regards to Hashem's Das. But the Alter Rebbe is going to add over here a Chiddush. The very same thing applies to all the midos of Hashem, and all of Hashem's holy names. In other words, all of Hashem's midos, that which we say, Hu v'daito yechad, for example, the same thing is that Hu v'chasto yechad, Hu ugvurasa yechad. Hashem is absolutely one with all of his midos and all of his names. And not only the names in the Torah, but like kinuyim, shekinu lo hanavim v'chazal. All the different kinuyim is descriptions, adjectives that the Nevi'im or Chazal ascribe to Hashem. Kegoyin, for example, we talk about Hashem being a Chanun or a Rachum, v'chosid, or kiyitza b'hen. or all these different names, the Eibishter, every single one of these midas and every single one of these adjectives, Hashem is absolutely one with them. V'chein ma shenikra chacham. The same thing is the fact that we call Hashem a chacham. The Ksiv, as the pasuk says, v'gam hu chacham. It's a pasuk I think in Yeshaya. So Hashem is referred to as a chacham v'gomer. V'chein ritzoyne. We know Hashem has ratzon. Ki reitza Hashem es yireav. We know Hashem is a ratzon because it says that Hashem wants, He desires those who fear Him. And the pasuk says v'chafetz chesed. The Eibishter desires chesed. V'reitza b'tshuvasam shal rishoyim ve'eni chafetz b'misasam u'v'rishasam. The Eibishter desires for the Rishonim to do tshuva. He does not desire that they should die. He does not desire they should be wicked. So we see Hashem has ratzon. The Eibishter has pure eyes. He doesn't want to see evil. Again, we see Hashem's ratzon over here. Nevertheless, ein ritzoyne v'chachmasay yomidas chastay v'chachmasay v'sharmidays of Hashem's ratzon, His chachma, His chesed, His rachamim, and all of His midas, they're not meisifim by ribi v'arkava chasashon. They do not mean that the Eibishter has multiple aspects to Him, and Hashem is not in any way a hybrid of these. B'mehusay v'atzmusay. These do not add anything or add any harkavat Hashem's essence. Ella, rather, atzmusay mehusay ritzei chachmasay. The Eibishter's essence and His ratzon and His wisdom and binoi v'daitei. Umidas chastei, and Hashem's chesed ugvuras in His gvura v'rachmanusay, and His rachmanis v'tefartei, and His teferes. Haklula machastei ugvuras, as we know, teferes is a hybrid of chesed and gvura. V'chein Shaar midas of akdoshis, and the same thing, all of Hashem's midas. Hakoel achtus pshuta mamish. It's all absolute one, oneness with Him. Shehihi atzmusay umuhusay, and this is Hashem, which is one with Hashem's essence. Now, does this make any sense? On the one hand, we're talking about clearly defined attributes which Hashem has, whether it's Hashem's ratzon, whether it's His chesed and gevura, His rachmim, His seichel, and at the same time we're saying everything is achlus pshuta, it's absolute oneness. How's that possible? The Rambam says that this concept, the mouth doesn't have the power to say it, the ear doesn't have the ability to hear it, nor does the heart of a person have the ability to recognize it properly. So the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us that this is something that we accept and we don't necessarily understand. And the next two prakim of Shaar Vehaemunah will be devoted to explaining why we can't understand it, why it is utterly above and beyond our understanding. And it boils down to this: a person envisions in his mind everything that he wants to understand. You envision everything as they are within you. And the Alter Rebbe is going to proceed to say that when we, it says the famous joke that it says Nasa Hashem, that Hashem created man in His image, and we try to return the favor. In other words, make Hashem in our image. We try to imagine Hashem in our, but the truth is we don't have any other tools other than looking at ourselves and trying to imagine the way Hashem is in a similar way. But the problem is that this is obviously a flawed way of trying to understand Hashem, because ultimately Hashem is completely removed from the human experience. But this is an inherent flaw that we have. The famous example: go try to describe to a person who is blind from birth. Go try to explain to him colors. It's impossible because it's completely outside of his frame of reference and his experience. So when we talk about Chachma and Bina and Ratzon and Midas, and we assume that Hashem's Chachma and Midas and Ratzon are somewhat similar to ours, and therefore we apply our rules of thinking and understanding to them, but that's a mistake. That's a flaw that we always have. Imagine, whenever let's say we have a certain IQ, so we can also imagine something that is beyond our experience but related to our experience. We can imagine someone who is much smarter than us. So I know how much 8 times 5 is, but if you ask me how much is 8,967,481 times another 9-digit number, I can't. But can I envision the possibility of someone being able to figure that out like that? Yeah, because it's on a scale. We're all on a scale. So that person, and I get it, I could do 8 times 9, and that person can envision that. So I can envision, I have certain capabilities because I have 2 arms. So if I want to imagine someone who has much more capabilities than me, I can imagine in my mind someone who has 10 arms. Imagine someone with 10 arms, what they can accomplish. But the idea of being able to accomplish something without arms at all, that's beyond our frame of reference. You look back at the different predictions that were made in the 70s and the 80s, even the early 90s, about where scientific breakthroughs will take us. What's going to happen? What's interesting is you see that all the projections are the people taking their current reality and augmenting their current reality. Augmenting it. Okay, so back then people had cars, and people had, and there were planes. Okay, so it's very easy to imagine that 30 years down the line, put 2 and 2 together, so every one of us will have a little private airplane to fly to work with. Back then, you have the idea of robots, okay, so we'll have robots running all over the place, doing our functions, because these are all things that was within the frame of reference of what people had at that time. People will be living on the moon. That's what, and Mars. Why? Because, again, we've already been to the moon, and we already fly. But no one really accurately, or even close to accurately, guessed actually what's going to be today. The idea that you have a little thing in your hand, and all the information in the world is at your fingertips. And anything that you need to do, whether it's shopping, whether it's work, and that no one imagined that. Why did no one imagine that? Because it was out of the frame of reference. There was nothing in the current reality. It was a quantum leap from where people were. People were always busy imagining their current reality, but in somewhat of in an augmented state, in a better state than it was before. It reminds me of the joke. They say that when the train first came out, so as was known back then, the horseless carriage. So in Chelm there was a big meeting of all the wise people in the city to try to figure out how is it that you have this horseless carriage, and they decided to send the wisest person in Chelm to the big city nearby to go and to examine the train and to come back and let them know exactly how it works, how it's able to move. So the wisest person of Chelm goes to the big city, to Minsk, and he inspects the train, and he interviews the engineer and different people who are involved in the assembling of the train. And after he finishes 2-3 days of his investigations, he turns to the conductor and says, "Okay, after all these questions, please do me a favor. Can you please show me where the little horse is? Where's the little horse hidden?" In other words, after everything's said and done, there has to be somewhere a little horse. When you live in that in that frame of mind, there has to be a little horse. Otherwise, how's the train moving? After all the explanations that were given, you can't move away from the current frame of reference. And that's the Alter Rebbe is going to explain to us is the flaw. Is that, yes, on the one hand, Hashem has all of these midas. He has Chachma and Bina Das, Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Ratzon, Chanun, Chosid, all these things. And at the same time, it's Achdus Pshuta, they're not Moisef and Hashem, any Ribun, any Harkava whatsoever. It's beyond our understanding. Completely beyond our understanding. As we go along, we'll understand a little more why we can't understand. I think we spoke about this once before, that there are certain big questions, scientific questions, which even the scientists, they don't have an answer to. And there are some questions that the scientists, not only that they don't have the answer to, but they know that these questions are unanswerable. At least according to current scientific understanding, it's not pshat that they don't have that, like the final number of pi. I'm not a mathematician. From my understanding, it's not pshat that Well, it doesn't end. So no one ever could have the answer to that question. It's not that today, there's certain questions that are unanswerable. Now imagine that you're a scientist and that you studied the field, a relevant field, and finally you mastered it and you came to the conclusion that this question is unanswerable, and you understand why it's unanswerable. You understand why it can never be understood. And then you take the same question and you go to a kindergarten kid and you ask the question, the kid says, I don't know. So the scientist says, I don't know, and the kid says, I don't know. But there's a very big difference between the I don't know of the scientist and the I don't know of the little kid. The little kid is saying, I don't know, because they have no clue what in the world you're talking about. And the scientist, I don't know, follows a whole chain of understanding to be able to reach the level of I don't know. In fact, we know there's the famous, I think it was written by Yedaya HaPanini from the times of the Rishonim, that he wrote a poem, and one of the famous lines of his poem was Tachlis HaYediyah Shalei Nede'acha, which means that the goal and the purpose of all our understanding is to come to the conclusion that we can't understand you. So you can ask the question, so why did you even start? So Chatila say, I don't understand. No. Tachlis Hayediyah. The purpose of all our understanding is to reach the understanding, the Leina De'acha, that we can understand you. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next two prakim, is understanding just how ludicrous and ridiculous the concept, the thought even, that we should be able to have some sort of Yediyah and Havana in Hashem and His Midos, and once we get there, we'll realize, okay, Taka, in our experience, we have all these midos, and that makes us a murkav, that makes us a composite. The Eibishter has it, and nevertheless he's aklas pshuta. It doesn't make sense. But why do you have even the expectation of being able to understand that? That's what we're holding right now, and that's what we're going to continue on learning. Let's continue inside. Kigoyin, for example, 2 lines from the bottom of page Pei. Kigoyin, for example, imagine a person wants to envision in their mind wants to understand what is ratzon, what is chachma, what is bina, oidas, midas chesed v'rachmim. You want to understand the essence of what is chesed or rachmim or anything similar. So you imagine, you envision all of them as they are in you. But in truth, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ram V'Nisa V'Kadosh Shmoi, but the Eibishter, He is Ram V'Nisa, He is exalted V'Kadosh Shmoi. His name literally is Kadosh. Right? Sheikhinad Marim V'Kadosh Shmoi. What does Kadosh mean? Koloimar, meaning Shehu Kadosh Umuvdal. Kadosh means removed, absolutely removed. Ribi Revaves Adin Kates, tens of thousands upon tens of thousands, and an infinite Adin Kates V'Tachlitz, and an infinite amount of Madrigas Havdalis, Lamaila, above Me'erach V'Sug Umin. From, I thought I was putting so many adjectives from the any erech, the type of, the species, kolatish, bachis, v'amailis, sheyichlu ha-nevroim, lahasig, u'latzayir b'sichlam, from anything, any praise that creations can comprehend or can envision in their minds. Like, la'ela mikal b'chasa v'shirasa, tush b'chasa v'nachamasa, d'amina ba'alma, in Kaddish, that the Eibishter is above and beyond. We can sing, we can praise all day, and the Eibishter is absolutely beyond all that. As we know, even when we say Hakeil, Hagadel, Vahagiber, Vahanoira, so the Gemara says that there was once someone, I don't recall who it was, but was standing in front of one of the Tanoim, and he decided that he's going to sorry, what? Elaborate, yeah, and he started adding other words. And when he finished, so the Tana, I don't remember, maybe I don't recall who, turned to him and said, "That's all? You finished?" That's all you have to say. And he says, and if it wouldn't be for the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu himself said, "Okay, we wouldn't be able to say that either." Because the truth is that by the Eibishter we have to recognize that
infinite.
That it's to be quiet. The praise is to be quiet, because what do we have what to speak? I once heard a word that We know you have David HaMelech, he composed 150 kapitel of Tehillim, he compiled, and the 150th kapitel is Hallelu B'Nevel, V'Chinar, Seifel V'Mochel, Minim Ha'ugav, all these musical instruments. And Kaviyachol, David HaMelech is saying, I finished 149 different kapitlach, chapters of praise for you, Hashem, but ultimately, words lack the ability to convey my feelings and convey your praise. So therefore, moving onward, the last kapitel is saying that we have to move now to music, which is also a big part of why Chassidische Nigunim, many Chassidische Nigunim don't have any words to them, because words in a way limit the feelings, limit the perceptions. But the truth is, so then there's the sometimes you say words can't capture what's going on in the heart, but our human hearts also can't capture b'chlal, the whole greatness of Hashem. And as we'll continue, the Alter Rebbe will tell us that the human being in general is comprised of 5 different madrigas. And the 5 different levels are Seichel, Midos, Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa, which Alter Rebbe is going to talk extensively about about these 5 levels. And how far is Seichel, is Chochmah, removed from Maisa? In the human being, you have a hierarchy: Seichel, Midos, Machshava, Dibur, Maisa. How removed is Seichel from Maisa? Very removed, as we'll talk about in the Kamir Shema next year. And it's only 5 levels removed. The Eibush, there's an infinite amount of levels removed from Chachma. And we'll continue with Hashem on this topic. We'll continue on the journey of Tachlis HaYediyah, Asher Le'nei De'acha, and Mir Hashem next week.